Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvisho Vahai, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. You are now back with us here at the SRV Ashram in Honaka'a to enter into our one last hour of teachings of the Shakta-Advaita-Vada path. That is, Vada does mean path. So we are on that roadway, radiant road to reality, they call it, under the auspice of Divine Mother of the Universe. And this ashram actually is a Divine Mother ashram because my teacher's teacher was a last living monastic disciple of Sri Sharda Devi up until his passing in the 90s, and taught us from this ashram in Portland, Oregon, well into his 90s. And so he got the mantra from Sri Sharda Devi, and of course who got it from Sri Ramakrishna. So we have a line of succession here that we are very serious about, and mantra is one of the practices. Actually, that's also here at her throat, if you remember the chart that we studied. And also if you came to the mantra retreat, which was about over a month ago, when we took 12 of these charts on mantra and went through them for 2 full days, going back and forth and in and out, studying the mantra very deep. So with Divine Mother and her name and her many august forms with us, we continue to flesh out all the worlds of name and form which are falling under her auspice. True, some of them do fall under the auspice of Maya. As we say, the further you get away from divine reality, then the more risk there is involved. The worlds of suffering and rounds of birth and death kick in, and that's one of the great risks of embodiment in the Burloka, or this physical realm, is to keep your mind very balanced and destroy what karmas you've brought with you. Make sure you don't form any mental impressions, samskaras they're called, in the mind, except positive ones, of course. Aklista vrittis. Vritti means vibration, aklista means positive, or ones that are free of the negativities, called klista vrittis in yoga. And then one can not run afoul of Maya. One might as well be living in the Leela. There's another word that is sort of in between Brahman and its Maya, or Shakti and her Maya. Is this word Leela, which means divine sport. So that is something that certain souls get very adept at as they come in and out of these amber stairs of birth and death, as we've been studying, as Sri Aurobindo called them. the amber stairs of birth and death. So that's a good metaphor to bring back, that we don't just try and jump from the lowest step to the highest step, but we use these avastas by stages and pull ourselves up by stages, spiritual growth in stages. Or as Sri Ram put it in the Adhyatma Ramayana, enlightenment dawns on the mind in stages. So you can think in terms of you moving towards enlightenment, or you can think in terms of mind, of enlightenment moving towards your mind. Either way, that preparation that you do, called qualification, is going to be very important, and you need to do it in advance of the advent of the light of wisdom or intelligence that comes through great souls that are your teachers, or who are the avatars. The avatar is like a huge ship, and it leaves a wake afterwards. So after Ramakrishna's passing, then we have this huge wake, you see, where all of us are, as it were, on those waves that he left behind of pure Shakti. As Vivekananda sang in one of his songs, I could actually sing it for you, called Achandala. He says, I make a complete offering of myself to my Guru, who is a huge wave of Shakti rising off of the indivisible ocean of Brahman. So I make a complete offering of myself, that's Sharanagata, to my divine teacher. His teacher was Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. That's not too shabby, is it? Have a guru like him. So in our exploration of many of these principles, and still on the subject of Maya and Mahamaya, we look into this principle of prana. It's also rather gradated. If you looked at a chart like this, say, what Vivekananda called the singular prana and its 5 forms. And one thing you need to know about prana that's the same as Maya is that it's insentient. This life force in you is not the main mover. It's not the great mover. It's not the conscious awareness. People get attached to life force, and that's getting attached to birth and death and life. This thirst for life forever quench. It drags from birth to death and death to birth to soul. Vivekananda put it in his song, the Sannyasin. So we can't get addicted to vital energy. And that is the greatest addiction of all in the realms of name and form. Prana, life force. It gives everything else its hold on you, whether that hold be drugs or alcohol, or it be attachment to children, or whether it be attachment to your university degree or your ego. Prana is at the root of all, is at the hub of all of that thirst for life, forever quench, he says. Because they conquer all who conquer self. So you're going to need to get this prana under your control. It's the first thing the yogis want you to do if you practice yoga, is to get the prana under control. You can do 100,000 asanas, that'll never get you enlightened. But if you get the prana under your control, that will lead you directly to thought, and thought to intelligence. And then you've got this connection inwardly to these kingdoms of heaven within you. You can begin to remember your past lifetimes, for instance, and all that you learned there, and bring that forward to the present lifetime. That's also tantamount to bringing forward your sanchita karma into the realm of your prarabdha karma so that you can neutralize it. So there's all sorts of advantages to mastering the prana. The Upanishads, the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad says there are 2 ways, superior ways to proceed in spiritual life. The best is coming into the body with a pure mind. You already realized your consciousness previously, and you bring it with you into embodiment. The second is getting a hold of the prana. If you haven't realized yourself yet, if you're still working on your sadhana, working to perfect yourself, then they want you to get a hold of the prana. So this chart and this chart, both, I put up here for us to consider. This chart particularly has a sort of, no, they both have a sort of gradated way of looking at things. Let's look at this one first because we started out with it. You can see here that prana forms a very important part of transcending Maya. Maya is inscrutable. That's all you can say about it. They say it's neither real nor is it unreal, nor is it a combination of real and unreal. Mm-hmm. Both or neither. It's just inscrutable. It can't be figured. That's why they want you to study it from a distance and not try and get into it and study it. This song that Swami Shardhananda, my teacher, wrote, puts it nicely. Stimita chit sindhu bedi uti loki jyoti gana koti surya galai chanche dar kanti jeno. Maya kandita karavari ujke lila keva heno ujala vala keveshe akanda gara praveshe. It goes on like that. He says, beloved companions, who can understand this sport of Maya, this limitless depth breaking into a limit? Today, the boundless infinite has been penetrated in its subtlemost realms, and a being has appeared here as a bright, irresistible child. He arose from the depths of timeless awareness. He was a magnificent mass of radiant effulgent who pierced the surface of the serene ocean of consciousness. Koti Surya, it's as if 1,000,000 suns were melted into a mold and turned into this brilliant child. Koti Surya Galaye. So, beautiful Bengali song that Swami Shardhananda sang about Sri Ramakrishna, his guru, and he served Holy Mother many years of his life too, right next to her. So, who can fathom this boundless infinite, you see, that breaks into a limit, this limitless Brahman that somehow breaks into a limit? Who causes that? You see, it's that Maya that causes that, makes the infinite seem finite, makes consciousness, truncates consciousness somehow, turns it into a form when it can never be a form. It's Maya, you see, stultifying, inscrutable. Nobody can figure it. So beautiful songs written about it, and that song, of course, from the standpoint of someone who did penetrate it. This is, there arose from the depths of limitless consciousness this magnificent mass of radiance that penetrated the curtain of Maya. Later on it says, the arc of the world is sinking in the vain dream of pleasure and greed. Traveling along the shining, star-strewn path, they enter the realm of Maya. Behold, the divine and his companion have descended today into this holy land. Means India. So that's how Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda beamed down, as it were, beamed out. See? According to Holy Mother, Vivekananda was a seer who sat in meditation like a wooden statue for 700 years at a time. And Sri Ramakrishna, wanting to take another form, he was Rama, he was Krishna, now he wants to come as Ramakrishna. So he needs a companion, so he comes into the realm, into the highest of the fivefold pure order, or the Rishi of the seventh world, and says, will you come down with me? You see, come, gather your incomparable mind back from formless meditation. Let us go down to earth and awaken the sleeping. That's what the song says. And then the golden child whispered to the seer sitting there in meditation for 700 years, the world, the arc of the world is sinking in the illusion of lust and greed. And then the seer gazes with delight at this radiant child, wakes up from gathers his incomparable mind back from samadhi, thrilled in mind and soul, and his face becomes radiant and serene. Then they travel the star-strewn path into the world, as if, like, all of those stars up there was a lower realm that they had to penetrate. Lower means outer. You can't say there's anything beyond. It's just infinite space. You have to go inside to understand this. Kingdoms of heaven within you, that this is the outer world according to those kingdoms. So you're coming out. And when you come out, you encounter the suns, you see. That's Agni, the god fire, in so many different suns. One of those suns they've discovered now is going to take you 11 centuries to travel around it in a jet. That's how large our largest sun is so far that we've discovered. 11 centuries to get around it in a jet? That's a big ball of fire. And all of that is part of the lower trajectory of Divine Mother's worlds. You see, far out, man, far out. So you're coming, the avatar means the one who descends, so it's coming out of the incomparable state and taking this seer with him. There's this great seer Vivekananda, and they're both going down to the world through the star-strewn path. Oh, it's a beautiful song. It's just nothing quite like it. There are several songs like that written by Ramakrishna's devotees, so they must have been touched very deeply by him. Now, in this, you see the 5 pranas there, which somebody was talking to me today about before class. Prana, samana, apana, udana, and samana, or vyana. And then there's ekaprana, the one prana. So there's the one prana, it's like the god of prana, in 5 forms. And this triangulation that's there in the graph is you use this prana to understand its all-pervasiveness. Like, for instance, it's what gives earth, air, fire, water, and ether its power to shine, to flow, and to produce food and so forth. The prana is in everything. And so that's sort of the first level of things, but when you get to the psychic prana, then you get to things like the power of the mind to apprehend things. Apprehension itself is fueled by the prana. See, you're still using the prana, but you're using it at a psychic level. And you can understand it a little bit more when we look at this graph. But the senses then, these 5 senses, connect to each one of these 5 elements, and you'll find that the power of the eye to see, the power of the ear to hear, power of the tongue to taste, power of touch and all that are called indriyas. Indra is the god of gods. So indriyas means your senses are little gods. And they have this light of prana in them. So it's there. See, like I said last week, I think, you ever wondered if all of a sudden what makes you just stand up and walk? And you see your legs moving. You see your hand waving at your friend, but you feel like, what's making this happen, you see? Mm-hmm. So there was some willpower, Icha Shakti, combined there with using her prana to give you the power of animation. So animation is there too, you see. And transmigration and purification, all of these are another quintuplication that you'll find prana is. That is, if you want to purify yourself, you're going to have to use the prana to do it. Breathing, for instance, will purify the nadis, right? You start with your breath. Breathe in, held, breathe out, and so forth. Rechaka, kumbhaka, puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka, and then another kumbhaka at the end. So you're doing this 3 or 4-fold breathing process that purifies you more if you bring your intelligence and your consciousness into it, if you know what the prana is and what you're actually working with, rather than just doing it blindly. See, like some people do by rote. So, prana there then is wisdom, and that's indicated here by the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, the Yajur Veda, and the Atharva Veda, and the Yagya Ashrama, Yagya sacrifice, which is also here on this chart too. We find it. is a very important part of the connection between life force and psychic life force, thought, intelligence. Again, this chart will explain it better. And then you see here, we get really towards those Icha Shakti we were studying, right? Thought, mind, and willpower. There's Icha Shakti. And over here, food, mantra, and sadhana. That is, you eat food, you do after you say the mantra over the food, and then you take the energy from food and you do your practice, and it comes up the spine. That's called prana, mukhya prana, or mukhya prana first, and then prana, and then psychic prana. And as that gets purified by the process of conscious eating, conscious meditation with mantra, and finally actually entering into a practice, sadhana, which could include things like pranayama, but would be more like study of scriptures. Thought, mind, and will get into the picture. And you're just beginning to refine the prana more and more. As if it seems like it's getting more and more refined, but you're just entering different levels of its stations. You see, like just marching inward up these steps that I was talking about, started the class out talking about. And pretty soon you're going to find that prana actually is the doorstep. Psychic prana is the doorstep to Mother Shakti herself. And you're going to graduate that particle. You can put this in terms of particle. There's the atomic particle, but there's also the atmic particle. So you go atmic particle, pranic particle, mental particle, intelligent particle, and finally no particles at all. That's not a new thought. Ramakrishna was saying, if you drop a sugar cube into tea, hot tea, you can see it happen. You see, just break into two, and then into chunks, and then into granules, and finally there's nothing. So as you get deeper and deeper in, everything gets more and more dissolved away from the physical, and your consciousness is the proving ground. That is, that's what's left over when everything else is dissolved. If you want to put it in terms of panchakosha, the five sheaths, then you're dissolving the body, and you're dissolving the prana, you're dissolving the mind, you're dissolving intellect, and you're dissolving the ego. That's pancha prana, right? The 5 sheaths of Vedanta. And when you get beyond those 5 sheaths, then the student says to the teacher, you told me to get rid of the 5 sheaths, now I did so, there's nothing left. And the teacher says, good. Now meditate on nothing. Emptiness, it's called, you see. And as you meditate on emptiness, then you'll see what's behind emptiness. That form was in the way. See, but you're not used to formlessness yet. So you have to look at formlessness inside for a long time. Then you'll see unmanifested prakriti. You'll see the seeds, you see, of everything. And then you'll go beyond the seeds and you'll hear the sound, om, hear it humming, or see the light in the distance. And everything is now beginning to dissolve to, the sugar cube is completely dissolved in this beautiful, homogeneous, sweet cup of tea, you see, called Brahman. And so this dissolution of the mind stream process is happening, and this chart and this chart both sort of explain it in less philosophical terms and a little bit easier to understand than the Shaivites might want you to study, if you were a Shaivite, you see. And this has to do more with the order of beings, deities again, and how they inhabit these stations. And this has to do more with the energy you're using to get to those stations. You have to put all this together. There are the stations themselves, there's an energy to move consciousness, and there are the deities that manifest the consciousness. And when you put all this together, then your meditations are going to be much more complete, and your progress is going to be swifter and more definitive, deeper, more profound. Scriptures will open up their secrets to you, the secrets of food and exercise, and all the things at the physical level will be an open book to you. And this prana you'll realize its efficacy, and then it'll introduce you to Shakti. They say in the Upanishads, Shakti is like a spider. She's like a spider with a web, and the web is her prana. You see, so her web extends through all the worlds that we've been talking about, from causal to subtle to gross. And so prana is here in water and in trees and everything, and it's in your breath, and it's in your movement of your hand and the batting of your eyelids and so forth. It's all prana is at the cause of it. So you'd think prana was at the cause of everything, but you don't know yet about the psychic prana, what carries my thoughts. You don't know about Shakti, which is intelligence, pure intelligence itself. So you're going to have to make these connections in your practice. And this is why you do a breathing practice. And not just to purify yourself, and it's not just to do your practice or to feel high or something, you see, or to become a healthy animal. You're wanting to connect back to your Atman, back to her. She's the purveyor of the Atman. She put the spark of consciousness called Atman in you, you see, before inception. So the idea here is that as you become aware of the value of prana, well, a story illustrates it best. One rishi was asked, how many gods support creatures and who is the greatest god? The rishi replied, the ether is that god, and air, fire, water, earth, mind, and senses are all gods. These, standing forth, manifest their power and declare, we support the body, we hold it. Then Prana said, do not be deluded, I alone, dividing myself into 5 parts, hold and support the body. But air, earth, fire, water, ether, mind, and senses were not disposed to believe him. And they argued with him. So he abandoned them. And as he went out, so did all the others. Just as bees leave the hive when the queen bee leaves, so did the speech, mind, ear, eye, and all others depart when Prana departed. Then, when he returned, they all praised him. Said, yes, you're the highest God. So, prana is that life force that gives everything its power, its animation. Eyes see, the mind thinks. That's why food is so important in our tradition, because that's where you'll find the grossest prana in the food. And it's your task to render it pure and bring it up the spine. That's Kundalini, system. It's up here. So we talk about Atman, or you're talking about Kundalini, or if you talk about it in terms of the most refined food energy, it's called Ojas. When you've taken prana from food and become healthy, and then you haven't stopped at health, but you've begun to practice with your health. The energy you have from good health, you begin to practice. Study the scriptures, do your worship, do your mantra, serve altruistically. Whatever you do, you're using energy to do that sadhana in order to deepen your understanding and gain enlightenment eventually, ultimately. And so if you do that, then Ojas shines. And then that Ojas turns to Tejas, and you can teach others. Tejas is the aura people talk about when it's coming off of Buddha or Christ. You see a light, you see, that's Tejas. I mean, you stand near them and they teach you. Everything pervades you. Their teaching and transforms you. You can't, if you've ever had a communion with a very high soul on this earth, like say our founder Lex Sixon, when I was with him, I always felt like everything he said had a profound effect on me. Or if I was with Swami Sheshananda, who was a monk for 95 years, or his whole life really lived in a monastic vein, then everything he said had a huge power behind it. So they've stored up this power, it's become Ojas, and then that Ojas has become Tejas. And that's another way of saying it. So whether you're talking about it Vedantically or Kundalini or Tantrically, basically that's what the conclusion has been in all of those darshanas. Now, a question I had for a long time was, where does the prana come from? And so I found this in the I think it was in the Prashna Upanishad, or possibly it was in one other Upanishad. It said, of the Atman is born this prana. Like a shadow it is spread out on that. It comes into the body by the act of the mind. So that gives you both its source and the way that it's itself emanates from its source, comes into the body by an act of mind. So that's a very key piece that fits with everything else you've ever learned in yoga and Vedanta and Buddhism and so forth, is that everything is mind-only school, that everything comes through the mind. So the prana too will come through the mind. It's what's carrying your thoughts. And it's also going to be very valuable to you in meditation when you want it to carry your thoughts away. They say there's this one up moving prana, you see there, udana, this one upward moving prana that's connected with ether. And as it moves up, that's inward, of course, then your thoughts go with it. So if you master the udana form of prana, then you never brood, you're never depressed, you're never unhappy, you're always peaceful. And you can also keep your mind at the level of the teachings all the time. All the time. Your mind never leaves the teachings. You're just in the Dharma. So that's why Milarepa says, when I think of the Dharma, I just can't help but want to share it with others. Because the Dharma has saved him, and his mind has received the ability to stay at the level of the teachings and not fall from there. Just always thinking about the teachings and how they connect and the beauty of that. So he's living in a different world, you see. And when you understand that, then you can begin to understand the nature of some of these beings. The Vidyashvaras, the Mantreshvaras, the Vidyas and so forth. What Shaivism is trying to tell you when it tries to describe you, those kinds of beings to you, are beings that have really lifted off of the earth atmosphere. They're not involved anymore with lower knowledge, aparavid, or with intelligence only or secular things. They've really just lifted off of that, been there, done that, and now they're completely engrossed and involved and permeated, saturated, like sweetness in sugarcane juice, Sri Ramakrishna said, with these teachings. And that's all they just live that. See, there's nothing else here to be in the body for. The body itself is a teaching, and everything becomes Brahman. Then that's where you realize the efficacy of the Mahavakyas, the great sayings. Let's look at this one other. In case you didn't know these 5 pranas, I put them here. Prana, inhalation, ingestion. Apana, exhalation and excretion. So anything that moves in, anything that moves out. Samana, digestion and distribution. Udana, upward rising, as I was just saying. Vyana, all-pervasive. If you know that one prana in 5 forms is there at all levels. Remember, this is usually what they teach you about prana in Hatha Yoga and in this contemporary age. But you're not applying these 5 and this one to other much higher levels of awareness. These 5 pranas will extend and mean different things, see, at different levels of your consciousness. You can't just restrict them and leave them with a healthy body, or with the circulation of the blood and the pumping of the heart and the lungs breathing in and out. So you don't want to leave it there. That's very, very short-sighted of you. You must take this and make the connections as the prana moves inward to the psychic prana. Just study Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and you'll find out that he has a whole section on the psychic prana, where that's where things really start getting good, you see, for the practitioner. I knew there was something deeper going on here. You see, now you're beginning to get to these secrets and so forth. Now, one last quote here, and we'll look at this because this is more explanatory of the prana. All the forces that are in the universe resolve back into the prana. In the next cycle, out of this prana evolves everything that we call energy, everything that we call force. It is the prana that is manifesting as motion. It is the prana that is manifesting as gravitation, as magnetism. It is the prana that is manifesting as the actions of the body, as the nerve currents, as the thought force. From thought down to the lowest force, everything is but a manifestation of prana. Jaya Vivekananda Sannyasi Vir Chiragairika Dari Jaya Vivekananda. This master who came, whom Sri Ramakrishna brought out of a 700-year meditation as a wooden statue down to earth to save the ark of the world that was sinking in lust and greed. What does he think about? See, how does he get here and leave after 32 years of work or 39 years of work? Via this mastered prana, you see. He knows it all, at all level. He knows it as the gravitational force out there, but does he leave it there? Or leave it in the body or in physical things? Or does he also know that it manifests in the nerve currents? That's a very powerful thing to know. That it manifests as that thought and its movement, inward and outward. Those are very powerful things. So that's why, for instance, if I can lay my fingers on it here, we could sing something like Mumuksha Darshita Bihamsam Gavanai Vinaikam Padukam Nitantan Matavat Samanam Dehi Me Mumuksham Madguru Vivekanandate Prabhate Pranjalihi Narendra Shashave, Narendra Yovane, Narendra Kridane, Narendra Shikshane, Narendra Palane, Narendra Harpane, Vivekanandate, Prabhate Pranjalihi. Pranjali, prana. One of these beautiful hymns written by one of the Swamis. Salutations to thee, Vivekananda. You are the world teacher who grants liberation to sincere seekers. Your own burning desire for truth and freedom proved a shining example. Kindly infuse us with the same intensity for freedom from bondage. In this auspicious dawn of illumination, O Vivekananda, we offer you our eternal salutations. Vivekananda te Pranjalihi. So, one verse of some 13 verses that we often sing to Vivekananda. So, he knows the prana in and out. Read his commentary on the Yoga Sutras. It's called Raja Yoga. He also has Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Those 4 yogas are available at SRV centers and Vedanta centers, Ramakrishna order centers, and so forth. Those 4 yogas are a good beginning if you want to start studying the deeper teachings in book form from about the 4 yogas. So with that quote, let's move then to explore the prana in a little different level. Not teachings you're going to get very many places, I must say. Prana, an unknown factor, mostly, as I was saying, in what we do. Let's start with the upper quote from the Svetashvatara Upanishad. Controlling the heaven-aspiring senses and the life force with the help of the mind and intellect, the immanent soul so regenerates them as to enable them to manifest the infinite, luminous light of awareness. All that exists in the 3 worlds is under the control of prana, and prana is mother. May she transmit wisdom to us via her divine energy. Her divine energy is called Shakti. And so this chart really is pretty much about Shakti and how it manifests itself at different levels and appears as prana. If we were to start at the bottom, then you see food. So what I did here was made a coil. See, that's Kundalini. You can see the coil going up here. And then put a graph over here and another graph over here to sort of measure the degrees of cosmology that you're moving through. Could also say, as I was saying, degree of particles you're digesting. By the time that your mind begins to meditate, it's digesting mental particles, and then finally intellectual particles, and finally bliss particles, and then finally no particles at all. So you can put it in terms of that too if you like particle theories. Now, food what I did was, at each coil I put one of these assignments and then looked in the scriptures to find an example of what they mean of prana at the level of food. Here it says, when prana pours forth as rain, all creatures are delighted knowing that there will be food. So they're not saying, oh, food is growing from the earth and so forth. They're saying, when prana pours down as food, then as rain, then everyone knows there will be food. So they're starting back with rain, which is happening right now to us in Hawaii here. Mention her and she comes, you see. So rain is really, prana is helping that to move, like it helps everything to move. Remember, water was one of those gods that stood up and argued with prana. And when prana left, water fell flat, you see. In fact, it wasn't protected from the sun anymore and it disintegrated, you see. So it didn't have its power of movement, its power of purity, its power of flow. So at the level of food, then, you can see that's a gross level. Let's look at the primal level. That is the 5 elements. He burns as fire, he is the sun, he is the cloud, and the wind, earth, and all of matter. He is what is and what is not, and also what is immortal. So prana can be traced right up to Brahman. Sometimes in the Upanishads they even use prana as a word for Brahman. It's very, very amazing status that they give to this life force. As I said, is the greatest addiction for beings at all levels. That's what keeps the Mantreshwaras from transcending Maya, is this prana, you see, that's helping them do the mantra and making the connections between the energy, the intelligence with the sound of the word, and the sound of the word with the meaning of the word with the object itself. The action of doing the beads is all prana, isn't it? You can't move your fingers without prana. You can't spin the beads without prana. You can't understand what the mantra means without prana. It's how key it is. And it's a missing element in Western understanding. It's missing. So are the tanmatras. The 5 subtle elements are missing in our understanding. We have worlds we create in dreams tonight. That's done out of thought with psychic prana. So there's 2 very big gaps in our cosmological understanding in the West. That's if we even begin to approach higher intelligence. If we even believe in it. Begin the journey, as they say. Now that's at the primal level. Let's look at the vital level, body and senses. So you see how we're marching up to scale, how prana is, if you watch carefully, how it's going to get more and more refined till all of a sudden it's on the scene as Shakti. And you're looking at something very deep and very powerful, very dynamic. The quote from the scripture, "O to thee, O prana, who dwellest in the body with the senses, all creatures carry their offerings." So body and senses would be a very important part of prana. Now, fetus and nourishment from the womb and taking on of a body, development of the senses, finally the brain develops and so forth. All of that is pretty much at the material cause of things. That's all people believe in. From the cradle to the grave, my teacher used to say. It's a quote from him. From the cradle to the grave, people believe just in the material cause of things. But they don't see the prana that brought the soul into the body prior to the formulation of the fetus, prior to the sperm and the egg getting together, prior to the sperm even being formed. They don't see that prana as being key to that process. The prana that's outside the body, psychic prana, no key to that, no clue, because I haven't mastered it and used it to explore myself yet. So I'm going to need that if I'm going to see the kingdoms of heaven within. I don't think Christ had full mastery of the prana, then you've got another thing coming. Now, let's look at the ethereal level. From gross to primal to vital to ethereal, you'll find rebirth and the ancestors. Through one of the great nadis, remember nadi is a subtle nerve inside of the gross nerves. You're going inward, not outward. Through one of the great nadis, prana carries the soul to virtuous worlds by virtuous deeds, and to sinful worlds by sinful acts, and by both to the world of men. So that's why you find such an admixture here of souls. Some good, some wicked, and some combination of both. As Vivekananda said, nothing all good here, nothing all bad here. It's all an admixture. And then, the soul is emphasizing its dark side or its light side, as the case may be. But the real teaching here, so beautiful, is that prana carries the soul along those nadis that come into the body and leave the body. So you should purify the nadis with pranayam, right? And then the nerves become open, and then they become noticed by you, noticeable. You see them. Inside you see, I see I can draw energy along there, or energy is moving along there. I can jump on that Garuda bird and move with it, you see. This is going to help me in my meditation. If I'm having a problem with attachment to form, then I'll jump on the Garuda bird and he'll take me skyward. There's the ether, you see, the inner ethers, the inner akashas they're called. Then I can look down, no problem with form anymore, you see. I've been lifted off. Hot air balloon had its sandbags thrown out. And now I can just naturally buoyant, you see. Sri Ramakrishna loved that analogy. I could spend a lot of time there on that and draw a whole bunch of other charts out to look at it. Rebirth and the ancestors is a naughty thing. I mean that Knotty and Naught. It's very naughty and very hard to get over, very difficult to get through, and very tempting to be coming back in that constant habitual preoccupation with ancestors and humans. And the gods play into it too, and here's what happens next, is celestial. Sacrifice, yagya. Remember how important sacrifice, we've come across it many times now. Yagya is here on the chart. And we had that teaching last week, the 12 sacrifices of the Bhagavad Gita, if you remember. Bahuvidya, that is the storehouse of the Vedic sacrifices. We looked how you could offer senses, you could offer food, you could offer hearing, you could offer study of scripture, you could offer everything to Ishvara. There's so many different ways in which you can do sacrifice. But the 5 main ways are sacrifice to the rishis, sacrifice to the gods and goddesses, sacrifice to the ancestors, sacrifice to humanity, and sacrifice to animals, plants, and insects. And these are all different levels of sacrifice. They're called the 5 sacrifices. Pancha Yaga. Here's another 5 for you, you see, how important the Panchakarna system is in these traditions. What does it say here about the gods? O Prana, thou art the best carrier for the gods, and the first offering to the ancestors. Thou art Indra and Rudra, and the Lord of lights. So when you take it to the celestial level, then you're finding Indra, the god of gods, and you're finding Rudra, the terrible Shiva. You're finding these benign and wrathful deities, and you're finding the realm that they exist in. It's above the ancestors. That is, within, deeper within than the ancestors. A subtler level of consciousness, a subtler vibratory particle, a different akasha, you see, more subtle, that you couldn't see. So, te dhyan yoga nugata apashan, devatma shaktim, svagunair nugudam, yaha karnani nikilani tani, kalatma yuktanya, adidishtat yekaha. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the great ancient rishis saw the Devatma Shaktim, the divine power in everything, which, though covered by her own modes of nature, was nevertheless one and indivisible, and which had been incomprehensible to them earlier due to the limitation of their own intellects. Shakta-Advaita-Vada Upanishad, same quote as we were reading this great Upanishad, beautiful Upanishad. I'd recommend it highly as a read, as study. That's the one where you'll be hearing in the live streaming 2 weeks from now, 2 Saturdays and Sundays from now. We're studying the Shakta-Advaita-Vada Upanishad in Portland and in San Francisco. So that's one sloka we memorized out of that great scripture. They saw that Devatma Shaktim. It had been veiled to them earlier due to the limitations of their own intellects. Why were the limitations of their own intellects there? Because they hadn't mastered the prana and turned that energy on their mind. There were blockages there. They're called grantis, knots. Sanskrit word for knot is granti. It means knots in the body, yes, and that's where you'll find the teaching. But they don't talk about knots in your prana, knots in the nadis. They don't talk about knots in the mind, knots in the intellect, knots in the ego. You see, there are subtle grantis too you're going to have to deal with. That's why you can't meditate well, or that's why you can't breathe well, or that's why your life isn't balanced, because there's these blockages, impediments, obstacles. Pray to him. Om Jaya Ganapati Ganesha Jaya Om. You're the remover of all obstacles, O Ganesha. So remove them. Help me remove them. Help me see them first so I can see where they are and remove them. They're not just in my body. In fact, body comes last, doesn't it? Whatever a problem with my body is because the prana has knots in it. And whatever a problem with prana is because my mind has knots in it. Didn't we just say, here it is again, of the Atman, the prana is born. Like a shadow of a man, it is spread out on that. It comes into the body by will of the mind. So, body, prana, mind. Right? So what's ever wrong with you outwardly is because of something inwardly. That's why you can't depend on medicines entirely, you see, or surgeries. See, that might treat the immediate cause, but the immediate effect, but it doesn't treat the cause, and the cause may come back on you. Whether that cause be addiction to alcohol or drugs or other things that impede you in this day and age. And you give it up for 10 years, all of a sudden it comes back on you, you see. So the root desire is still there somewhere back in the prana and the mind, and how they flow together, or don't flow as the case may be. You're going to have to get at that. Let's look beyond the celestial to the divine, going up this graph. The mind and psyche. In the heart there are 101 nerves, and in each of them are another 100. And these branch into 72,000 more. In all of these move the all-pervasive prana. I've often said, or tried to say, and I actually created a chart on it now that I've shown occasionally, but if I could make a hologram here in front of us and show thousands of networks of nerves and see how prana is moving along them and see how souls go to different places. I mean, if you know the 7 chakra system, then you're getting close to that kind of thinking, because the nadis and the chakras are very connected to one another. To open the granti, there's that word again, the knot. Brahma granti, Rudra granti, Vishnu granti, there are different knots along the way named after the Trinity, and if you open up the one between the 3rd chakra and here, then you've transcended the ancestors basically, and you've arrived at the land of the devotees. You see, you're now a devotee of God, and you're for God and for nothing else but God. You're all for that. You're 100% committed and in love with your ideal. And you hear Om. You're beginning to hear Om at this navel heart juncture, you see, as a palpable sound humming inside of you. And it intensifies so much, it's at the root of all wisdom, which comes from here. And then pretty soon it's light, vision that comes here. Sound and light connect here. Shabda and Jyoti. And then all of a sudden you've got this 3rd eye which is open and single eye. So that's how powerful the system of nadis is. And here we're talking about it at the very divine level of mind and psyche. There are 101 nerves there in the heart, and each of them another 100, and each of those 72,000 others. So as you go inward, there's channels and energies passing along them and carrying thought, intelligence. And that thought and intelligence is still congealed into soul. And soul with a small s. It's called body-mind mechanism because it may be a mental soul at that point, but it still has desire in it to create bodies. And with prana, it will do that. The center is all about fetus, is all about birth, is all about food digestion, is all about ancestors and humans trading off, you see. It's all about desire. This thirst for life forever quench, didn't I just say? As Swamiji looked at it and put it into a poem for us. So we should become masters of the prana and know how it flows along subtle nadis. Hundreds and thousands of them. We don't need to get overwhelmed by that fact. Are you overwhelmed by the fact that there are many rivers and canyons here? Rivers, canyons, wind currents, tidal currents, those are all prana in waves. That's the same thing here as that's inside of there. It's all channels, it's all movement, it's all sheaths, it's all holders, dhara, it's all the holder of energy. So prana needs something to hold it, to flow along. It just so happens that here it's canyons and rivers and tides and wind currents. But if you could somehow see that and convert it into what it means inside of you, in the kingdoms of heaven and within you, it would all be about prana, shakti, movement of energy, souls going from place to place. And that's even actually happening to you here tonight in dream and deep sleep. You go along these channels, you just don't remember when you wake up. Thought has its own dynamic movement, I just said. Much faster than particles move. Manojavitvam is the incomprehensible speed of the mind. It's one of the 7 victories of Tantra. If you can get mastery over the incomprehensible speed of the mind, then it's called omniscience, you see. The universal is next, where cosmic intelligence. That's Trinity type of level. He says here, the wise one attains immortality, having known the origin of the prana, its advent, its all-pervasiveness, its fivefold distribution, and its internal aspects. So here's the master of prana for you. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva will be your master of prana. And beings like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda, who are our gurus, of course, you also find that out. Lato Gavane Paitavaneha Aye Siddha Brahmanagya Videha Taraka Sharata Ade Kata Prane Tumare Kripa Baya Hu Vigyane Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Karitava Bhajana Narendra Sujana Vishva Vijaya Kinhi Jagajana Ko Jagatava Kari Sakain Badaye Veda Hun Sakahene Tava Guna Gaye Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. It's called the Ramakrishna Chalisa. Chalisa means 40. 40 verses on Sri Ramakrishna. This particular one that I sang says, Latu was blessed by you. That's Swami, one of the Swamis of the Ramakrishna order. And he became an accomplished one, a knower of Brahman. Tarak, Sharat, and many others also got enlightened. Sharat was the one author of that song I sang you about, the boundless infinite taking on a limit. They all got accomplished by the sweet power of thy grace. The word is prana in there, isn't it? Yes. Tarak Sharta Ade Kata Prana. You see. So the sweet power of your grace is that refined prana, Shakti power. Vivekananda, realizing your divinity, sang your praises and became a world leader. Who can know and rightly praise thee, attempting which even the Vedas do not succeed? It's written by a man who's still living in Hindi, a doctor in India, who's in Chandigarh, I think. So I took it and put it to music. 40 verses on Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So, knower of the prana and how it moves. Knows it so much that he can use it to bless Latu and Sharat and Tarak and turn them into, remove the final vestiges of impediments in the subtlemost level of mind and psyche and turn them into knowers of Brahman. See? Why do you think beings of that level seek out a teacher? The highest teacher they can possibly find, to remove the final vestiges, you see, of rude ignorance that might still be lingering. I once, twice, thrice, had audience with Swami Ranganathananda of the Ramakrishna order in his room. He said, bring Babaji in my room, so everyone else had to stay outside, but I got to go in his room. And I'd just written this book, different stories of Ramakrishna, so I handed that to him, and he flipped through it. He was so happy. And so I got to know him some, and later on, they asked him, one of Surya Green was an interviewer there in India at the time, woman. She gave him an interview, and in that interview I remember him saying, or her asking, have you attained enlightenment? Have you gotten everything you want? And he said, no, there's still so much more. This is the president of the Ramakrishna order. This is like the Dalai Lama of India, right? President of the Ramakrishna order. So he's saying, oh, there's still so much more. I feel that there's so much more. And Ramakrishna himself always said that. Don't call me master, don't call me guru, don't call me father. Those are thorns that prick my flesh. They assume that I've reached the end of my spiritual life. But spiritual life is infinite and endless, boundless, just goes on and on and on. Like Maya, like nature, like you, like your soul, like Brahman. All eternal, everything is, everything is. And if you understand the prana, then you'll understand why everything is, everything is. That's the dynamic side of reality. Shiva is the static side, Shakti is the dynamic side. Fire and its power to burn, water and its wetness, snow and its whiteness. Can you separate them? A joke and its humor, if it's a good joke. If it's a bad joke, you do want to separate them. So at the cosmic intellectual level there, the knower of prana knows its advent, its all-pervasiveness, its fivefold distribution, and its internal aspects. And that would be a knower of prana, which is why I wanted to sing about that. At the superconscious level, that's Shakti, or Om. You see. Now here it says, when the three matras of Om are left unconnected, there is mortality. But when they are connected in the prana, they are rightfully employed. What is peaceful, undecaying, immortal, free of fear, the seer attains by the means of Om. I think this is a quote by Pipalada in one of the Upanishads, because he was the one that said, when the three matras of Om are unconnected, then there's mortality. A-U-M, right? A, waking state, U, dreaming state, M, deep sleep state. If they're unconnected, there's mortality. But if you connect A, U, and M, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, all of a sudden, you see, you're a knower of the prana, you're a knower of the Shakti, and you're a knower of Brahman. So why are you going to leave your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state far flung from each other? Are you going to think waking state is the only reality, dream is just a figment of my imagination, and I don't know what the hell deep sleep is. It might not even exist, because I wasn't there to see it. My ego went away, my body went away, my children went away, my money went away, everything went away in deep sleep. Yet I came back out of it. Disconnect, 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 you see. I'm just a worldly person. I'm just a material girl. See? Only thing I know is the waking state. That's real to me. So the seers disagree, and they've disagreed for people out of 10, 12,000 years. They've disagreed. So let's connect these apparently separate states of our consciousness and render them one because they are one. Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayam San Matram Anandaganam Vibhavayam Samahita San Antir, inner, Antaram, Va. Bahir, outer, Antaram, inner. Kalam Yetaha Sati Karma Bande, and burn my karmas. See? So connect what is outside to what is inside and make them all one indivisible state, then meditate on that state, then pass your time contentedly and be free. Sound nice? Good teaching? Out of the Vivekananda by Shankara in 700 AD. Much, much later than Pipalada. You connect them because they seem to be disconnected, see, but they're always one. The prana is always homogeneous. Didn't it say that in the last entry? All pervasive. You realize it's all pervasive. The problem with the prana is that it waxes and wanes. Its flow waxes and wanes. Sometimes my eyes see right, sometimes they don't. Sometimes my food digests good, sometimes it doesn't. That's the problem with the prana, at least down in these lower levels of the coil, you see. But when I start connecting it to Shakti inwardly, that's a whole different, another story. That's bliss you're talking about. That's supreme intelligence you're talking about. That's the peace that passes all understanding you're talking about. That's nirvikalpa potential. That's nirvana. That's a sampragyata. That's satori. Fana to the Muslims. See, whatever religion you look in, there's an assignment for that highest state. And as far as many of these systems of India are concerned, it's a matter of prana to Shakti to Brahman. A good trinity. Now, that was at the superconscious state. Now look at this graph. There's a graph that started with raw. That was food. And that's pretty good because raw food is supposed to be good, right? Paravasta. Mm-hmm. So raw. So body, senses, 5 elements, and food is all in sort of raw area of the graph. Then the refined area is rebirth, sacrifice. Then the subtle area is mind and intellect. And then the pure area is Shakti and Om. And finally the transcendent area all the way up to Kundalini Shakti herself, who is the dynamic power. Sri Ramakrishna said, no spiritual growth can be made without awakening Kundalini Shakti. So he could be talking about all sorts of levels, Buddhism, yoga, Vedanta, Tantra, Samkhya, but he's here stepping forward with a plug for the Kundalini Shakti system. There will be no spiritual progress unless you awaken Kundalini Shakti. He says a lot of things in the Gospel of Ramakrishna in those 1,000 and more pages. But when you find out that, then you want to make your introduction to her. See? And that's going to be done through the prana. If you master the prana, she'll pay attention to you. If you connect the 3 stages of Om with prana, she'll pay attention to you. So what is wrong with you, you see, that you're not making these connections? Don't you want to meet her? Do you want to know your true self? Do you know what's at stake there? I mean, suffering is nothing. Missing out of the chance to know her, that's much worse than suffering thousands of lifetimes in ignorance. You think that the risk here and the trade-off is, I just have to live again and again. Many people tell me, well, if that's true, Babaji, I'm glad to live again and again. Great. Mm-hmm. In fact, Krishna told that to Arjuna in the Gita. Know 2 things, he said, Arjuna, on this battlefield. One, that you're the Atman. If you cannot know that, then know that those things that are born die, and those things that die get born again. Where's the grief in this? Where's the grief in this? So if you're taking that tact, see, then there's a risk. But it's nowhere near the risk as missing out your chance to commune with the Divine Mother of the universe, to become her child, because you are her child. Her sons and daughters are everywhere. Some are still just living in mouse bodies, and some are living in kitten bodies. She keeps her claws retracted for the kitten body, but for the mouse body, fangs come out, claws come out. That's Maya. Mahamaya or Maya, take your pick. Which shall it be? Choose. Splunge for me. I'll take Mahamaya. Now, I think we have read all the quotes. Let's end here with this last one. Like the rays of a setting sun, when a man sleeps, all the senses and their functions merge into the superior God called the mind. Then he hears not, sees not, smells not, tastes not, feels not. And they say he sleeps. At that time, the fires of prana alone remain awake in the city, holding the two oblations of inspiration and expiration within it. Prana alone. Inhalation, exhalation, or inspiration and expiration. Prana alone exists there in that state of deep sleep. And they say, another quote from Pipalada, I think, says, then the soul rests in its own nature like a hawk in its nest in the mountains. Mm-hmm. So that rest is pure reflection. 45 minutes of deep sleep will make you peaceful for 24 hours, but 8 hours of dreaming will run you ragged, and you'll be a nervous wreck for 24 hours, the next 24 hours of your life, or longer. So this has been a fitting way to conclude our series of classes on the Shakta-Advaita-Vada subject with the teaching of prana, which is Shakti. And you just have to see these connections and make them, study them, and then, of course, take them into meditation, because that's where you'll get your aparokshanubhuti, your direct spiritual experience out of that. And study what happens to you in deep sleep, when thought stops, when breathing stops. And study that emptiness and see the seeds of creation. Actually, a better word would be projection. See the seeds of all projection in your own mind, then in the cosmic mind. And then she will be very proud of you, she'll be very happy with you, and she'll bless you. And may all beings be blessed, and may all beings be fulfilled and satisfied from the level of food all the way up to the level of wisdom food and into non-dual state of enlightenment. So here we must end, and we'll end here with one of our Vedic chants. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrinni Mahe Gatung Yagyaya Gatung Ye Nupataye Daivi Swastarastu Naha Swastir Manusebhyaha Urdvam Chikatu Bhesajam Samno Astu Dvipade Samchatushpate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a heartfelt offering into the Great Self. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Shankar-Chura Vinashini Jai Tulsi Jai Tulsi Jai